Hello and welcome to the Green Profit Academy Pros podcast. This show digs into the challenges in growing a lawn care and landscape business while maximizing your profit. I'm Christeen.
And I'm Steve Bousquet. We are the green industry experts in profit, growth, and leadership. Good morning, Christeen. How are you?
I am doing pretty good. It's a Monday, so collecting that energy to tackle the week.
Yeah, and I heard that you had Snowmageddon out there in Colorado last week.
We did. It was, we were just talking, it was like over 2 feet in about a 24-hour period. So 2 nights in a row where it just dropped and it had no opportunity to go anywhere. So yeah, we had tons and tons of snow, but I have to say all the snow plows, our community, the, guys who get out there and clear the freeways, they did an exceptional job this time. We had so much snow and they had everything clear, the roads clear, sidewalks clear. I mean, it was just like magic that they just came out and moved feet of snow. Like the pile in our court was, when they cleared our street, was as tall as our first story of our house.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, they do a great job. Me and my son went to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, from Connecticut to Gettysburg in January, and it snowed the whole way. And the work that the crews did to keep those highways and freeways open was very impressive. So kudos to all the snow plowing teams across America that keep the roads open and safe for everyone. And I know as a snow plowing guy, and other people are listening to this, we appreciate that because we know the effort that goes into that for sure.
Yeah.
So hopefully you had enough snacks to make it through that, and maybe you internet stayed up and you had some movies to watch too.
Yeah, you've seen our pantry, so we could feed an army in there. We had plenty of snacks, no problems. It was, considering the amount of snow, everybody kind of found their way through it pretty easy. So
awesome. Well, my crews are out treating lawns and doing spring cleanups and edging beds and getting ready for mulching. So it's kind of spring in New England, and we're rocking and rolling already. Today's episode on the podcast, we're going to be exploring the fundamentals of monthly financial workflow for small businesses. Having a solid grasp on our financial processes is vital to maintaining a business's financial health and making informed decisions instead of winging it and just guessing or our gut feeling. And today we'll be sharing practical insights and providing some expert advice on this topic.
Yeah. So, this is kind of one of those things to where you hear it, you're like, oh, monthly financial workflow. Like, why is this important? Right. It's like, we're busy doing business stuff, so I want to kind of take a moment to share why this is important, coming from my background, warning, accountant in the room, right? So understanding and managing the monthly financial workflow, it's crucial, yet it's very challenging for small business owners for several reasons. It forms the backbone of your business's financial health, for one. So it allows the owners to make informed decisions, maintain compliance for their business, and also forecast future needs, right? Sounds pretty important. Like if that could happen magically and on its own, it would be a beautiful thing, right? I mean, I even want it to happen magically and on its own in my business. So I'm right there with you. The challenge, though, is the complexity of accurately tracking the information, making sure that it's put into the system properly so it could tell you accurate information. And that's typically what we find, is that this is the overwhelming part, to where they're like, oh, I've got to make sure everything's in the right place and, are coded properly or allocated properly, right? Like your cost of goods sold isn't being, put towards your office supplies or something, right? Because that's going to mess up your numbers. And then also managing the cash flow and then understanding like what your tax obligations are. This can be overwhelming for small business owners as well. It's a lot of thinking. It's a lot of trying to understand something that, we're not used to. We don't speak that language, which is why I love the Profit First system, because it makes managing your cash flow almost effortless. And then we can put all that tax obligation, we can assign it to somebody, right? Like working with the tax strategist. We don't necessarily have to do that part of it, but there's somebody on our team that can show up. So, and that kind of addresses, the difficulties when it comes to the tax laws, right? We don't have to understand them, but working with somebody who does. So we have somebody on our team. There's also some challenges around payroll management. So we're going to talk about that a little bit today too. And just kind of unpack like why the financial reporting is so valuable in a business. And, despite all these challenges, we really want to have a basic understanding and hopefully grow to a higher level of understanding when it comes to your monthly financial obligations in a business. Like, what is this workflow? Because it's going to relieve you of so much stress when you're trying to grow your business and maintain that high profit margin.
So one of the things, and for 28 years, I've been in business. This will be my 41st year. For 28 years, I ran my business really thinking as long as I worked hard, bought the right equipment, I knew my craft, I knew what soils to use, fertilizers, which trucks to buy, the best edgers, bark blowers, mulch, buying it at the best price, that my business would be successful. And it was successful, and we showed up, and every year we were still there, and we kind of went along, but I wasn't having the financial success that I had promised people, especially my wife and family. I hadn't had the financial success that I had promised myself. And but I kept working harder and thought it would be more customers. And then I came to the realization that it was because I was not financially educated about how to run my small business. Even though I had a degree in business and economics, I didn't understand the accounting part of my business and why it was so important to track, to have monthly reports, quarterly reports, and then how to manage with a balance sheet. So once I started diving into that and started running my business based on percentages and with the accounting, then I started achieving growth for my business, growth for myself, and I was finally able to reach those financial goals and those financial promises. And, I spent the next 10 years kind of feeling I had to make things up to people, including myself, catch up on my retirement, take my wife on a nice vacation, buy a new couch for the one that was worn out, not have to keep cars for 12 years. I really took it serious. So that's why we're going over this today, because if you are feeling behind to either your own promises or promises you made to other people, this is the podcast, at least that can help you get pointed in the right direction to make those life-changing moves in your business.
Yeah. And I love that you shared that point, Steve, because it is a journey. It's not something that just happens overnight, or we wake up, one morning and suddenly we understand all these things. And this is what really fuels my passion in working with small businesses, is helping them in their own way increase that business acumen and understand what they need to understand about their financials. And it's not everything, right? But it's just enough. And then having somebody else, maybe a couple people on your team champion that and move it forward so you can really focus on where you excel.
And I was just out in Nebraska last week, and I visited a colleague of ours, and I know he's a client of yours at Core, Adam, and we were talking, and all these, during the visit, there was a lot of numbers being tossed around. And he asked me what I thought my super strength was, my super talent in business, or my superhero strength. And I said it was my ability to motivate people to continue forward regardless of the challenges. And he's like, no, it's your number knowledge. It's how you integrate your number language into the business and make it real. Make it like every machine, what's the ROI on every unit, every piece of equipment, every employee by the hour. And it's become so much of who I am in that language. I kind of forgot about that. And, I was never going to have that conversation 20 years ago. But just I could see his eyes lighting up like, oh, if I buy this, I have to know how much that machine's going to generate. That I can do it. I can goal it, but I have to know ahead of time what that is. So I was glad to visit with him, but also to get that input about knowing your numbers. It is like having, superpowers, because it gives you the clarity and the opportunity to have so much more success.
Yeah. And that's why, with writing the book, all those tools that we wanted to provide, right? Where it's like, they don't know this. Let's do an easy tool for them to know this and make it easy enough for them to walk through those steps, to get that information, right? It doesn't have to be complicated. And it all ties back to when we're digging for those numbers and understanding those numbers in order to tie them to our business. The first step, and I talk about this in the book, is making sure that your foundation is set up properly. Because if you don't have, starting out with a solid chart of accounts, and your chart of accounts and your books are a mess, and you don't have somebody who's allocating things properly in the books, whether that's you and you're guessing, or you have somebody in your office who isn't experienced as you need them to be, you're not going to get the transparency that you need. So it's that technical foundation that isn't in place to give you that clarity. So your books and your numbers are not going to be able to tell you the story. So it's extremely important in this process, though I have to say probably very boring. Like, let's just agree on that, right? Is that we get the right things in the right buckets. So you want to keep your documentation with your sales invoice and know, what does that revenue tie to, right? Is it maintenance? Is it lawn application? Is it landscape? Where does it tie to for labor? Where does it tie to for equipment and materials? So, you're putting that information in there saying, hey, we're receiving this money. This money is related to X, Y, and Z. And oh, yes, A, B, and C. You want to keep the receipts that you have in your business. So you can refer back to those. It's not just clarity for us as business owners, but also the IRS really requires it, right? They want to look under the hood if they're going to look under your hood. They want to see everything. So, you need your bank statements as well to tie things out. And then all of this is going to be able to give you income and expense reports in your business if it's put into an accounting system.
And I had a friend of mine, he's been a friend for over 20 years. We've been in a business group for years. And then we both kind of matured out of that group. But part of that journey for him was he was frustrated. He could never get the right numbers. He could never get it dialed in. And he was trying to do it himself. And this guy's a whiz with lawn care. He knows about how to grow soft grass. But he was not an accountant person, and he struggled. He actually took some classes to try to figure it out at the local community college, and he still couldn't get there. And I finally kind of really leaned on him to hire professional help to get him there, because it might be boring for some of us. I mean, I'm not really good at developing, creating the reports. I'm really good at reading reports and knowing what reports and numbers I need to have so I can manage and grow my business. But so, we all need to realize where our strengths and talents lie, and then get the help that we need to make sure that we're getting this done. But you mentioned the chart of accounts. That might be one of the biggest things that, we see when we start working with new clients, is that chart of account needs to be correct. And so the challenge with trying to hire accountants just to do taxes or bookkeeping just to do weekly stuff is if that foundation is not set up with the right chart of accounts that are going to give us the right information, it's a constant struggle. So, and I do see on Facebook in some of the groups, the lawn care groups, the guys are bragging about how cheap they got their accountants to do their taxes, and how little taxes that they paid because they took the accelerated depreciation. But they're not talking like overall long term how their accountants are helping them. So we want to be careful about like making sure that we're looking long term at our business, and getting your financial numbers in order is the first place to start.
Yeah. And even working with a professional, right? Because we see things differently. We work in so many different businesses, in the lawn and landscape industry, in the trade industry. And and this is something I wanted to provide, in the toolbox, was a good chart of accounts, right? That's going to give them the transparency that they need. So making sure you're working, with somebody who can implement that, and then maybe even gaining some clarity, like having somebody take a look at it and go, are we allocating this properly? Is there something we could do better? It's not necessarily like you have to go hire that person full time to do it, but just getting some advisement and consultation to make sure that, yes, we are doing it right, because you're doing all the hard work of putting the revenue in there, trying to get those expenses in there and printing out those reports. Like, why not double check to make sure that you're 100% on the money? And that's one of the things, like, we've worked with customers in the past where it's like, hey, you're doing 98% of all the right things. If we make a few tweaks here in this 2%, this is where you could be. And I mean, it's golden, right? Like the profit margin percentage it can change, or the clarity that it can give you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 98%, I would take that. 85% puts you in the winner's circle. So, I mean, just getting to that point is really, and then you can, keep notching it up till you get up to that 98%. But, just getting your chart of accounts correct is one thing that we can do. And then you start working on your balance sheet, but we don't have to like the old, eat the whole elephant in one bite. We can say, this year we're going to make sure our balance sheet is correct. This year we're going to make sure our chart of accounts are correct. Mm-hmm. Then we'll start, looking at what accounts that can produce and what reports it can produce, so we can start managing and growing our business. So the documentation is right. You have to gather all the right documentation. We're going to have a checklist for all this. Make sure all your recording transactions are accurate. Super important, because if you're missing deposits, or you're missing payments, or you're missing liabilities, that can really throw off all the numbers. And then accounts payable and receivable management offering. So talk about that payable and receivable management, which sounds like technical, but what is it really?
Right. So accounts payable, right? Who do we owe, and what are the terms that we have to pay them? And then accounts receivable management is who owes us, and whether are the terms that we want them to pay us, right? And I always talk about kind of like friction points with this, like what's difficult, right? I like to get things done really fast. So if I have a vendor that is like, oh, you need to enter my bill, I'm going to mail it to you, and then I'm going to have you enter it in the system, and then you have to mail me a check. I'm like, yeah, no, we don't do that. Right? It's so much work. So what we did was we said, okay, give us a link that has an invoice in it, and we'll pay the bill. Right? It's easy. It's done. We don't have to worry about it. It cuts out like 75% of the time that you spend on it. But then our vendors, we have them paid on a specific schedule. A lot of them are set up on auto payments. So now that we have this long-term relationship with them, we can pay them when they're due, the amount that they're due, and nobody's waiting. But then on the other side, the only reason we were able to do that is because with our receivables management, so the people who owe us, we set up the terms ahead of time. We said, okay, when your invoice gets generated, we are going to charge your bank account or your card, and we will mail you your invoice. They know how much that invoice is going to be, typically in the ballpark of what it's going to be. The other thing that we do is we take prepayments. And this is all, you could do this all in any business, right? Trade business, lawn care, landscape business, it doesn't matter. Any business model this will work for. So if you are selling a product and they're going to be using that product over a period of time, you can say, okay, this is X amount, of cost. So we're going to charge you $1,000, and that $1,000 is going to cover your service from, we'll say March to November, right? For lawn care service. This is going to cover all your treatments when we go out and we do rounds. So you're collecting that prepayment, charging it once or charging it in maybe you do 3 rounds. So you charge it 3 times. That money is there when you need it. And you're infusing that cash in your business when you're delivering the service. So there are some techniques around receivable management. You really want to ensure that you're getting the money in the door per your terms and you're not chasing that money.
Yeah, chasing money is not good for landscapers and lawn care because we're really good at our trade and everything. We're not bill collectors, right? So
Right.
Setting things up so people, A, it's easy to pay us. B, we're on top of invoicing at the proper time. And C, really having those expectations outlined at the very beginning with the client. So everybody's clear right up front what the payment terms are and setting that right up front. So, one of the things that I am, no one walks out of Walmart without paying, right? No one says, let me take this for a month and see if I like it and decide if I'm going to pay you. Or nobody walks out and says, well, just bill me at the end of the month and then I'll take another 30 days to pay you. It's not how the world works anymore. So just making sure, and a lot of people are really good at this, people have lots of different apps. There's different programs you can have to get paid quickly, but that is really a big part of that. And also managing the prepayments, which is very big in irrigation and lawn care applications. And people can get themselves in trouble fairly quickly by spending that prepayment. And it might not just be prepayment for the year. It could also be deposits. So spending deposits and then not having the money to either buy the equipment buy rent the equipment or buy the material or meet payroll. So that's really a tip. That's a warning if you're having trouble, keeping up with that and you're getting those prepayments or the down payments for these jobs. So super important to get a good management handle on that. And really Profit First has helped me, really get a good grasp of that, but also just putting that prepaid money in its own account and not taking it out until you do the work. Because what happens, you get this big pile of money in and you're rich. So you start buying stuff that you need and want, and there might be a fine line there. And you're like, well, look at all the money. I've done it. I've pulled money out. Oh, I'm going to pay this debt off and that debt off. And then, in October and November, I'm like, oh, I'm broke because I spent all this money paying all this other stuff. Then I have to go borrow money to pay stuff when really if I had just kept the money in the right account, I wouldn't have been in that situation. So, I'm always guarding people against when they have a whole bunch of money in their accounts to pay off things. Start a new account, the debt payback account, and put 1 or 2% in that and use that account. But don't just grab all your cash and start paying off your assets. Assets being equipment, right? And assets are material, and we're gonna pay for that as we use it, and we don't need to. We're not retail or homeowner thinking we're going to pay the debt off because those assets are making us money. It's not like buying TVs and refrigerators and trampolines and,
Right. Yeah. The fun stuff, right?
The fun stuff these are assets that are going to make us money.
Yeah. And just a rule that I'll share is we have helped so many businesses move from living off of their prepayments to righting the ship in their business to where they're infusing the prepaid cash into their business when the services are delivered. It will take a minimum of 2 years for you to get back on the right track of financial health and stop living off of those prepayments, right? So think about that. If you are living off of your prepayments in your business, it can take a minimum of 2 years to stop doing that, but there's a process of getting into the habit of not doing that anymore. I promise you it can be done. It takes discipline and it takes awareness. So, but we've helped several businesses, right their ship and not live off of those prepayments and have just this big, beautiful account of prepayments as they launch their season and a schedule of production percentage that they infuse that cash into their business when they need it.
Yes, it's been a game changer for us. And, because it was interesting how much equipment we needed when we had a lot of money. And when we have budgets and money's allocated to the right accounts, how well we get along with the right amount of equipment. The shiny is no longer a thing because we're just not using money that's actually not ours to buy stuff we actually don't need to solve a problem that exists in the moment.
Yep. All right. So the next the next topic we're going to talk about, I was going to say situation, is payroll processing. We're going to dive into inventory management a little bit, and I want to talk about expense review and analysis. So payroll processing is one of those things that every business, once you get employees, like you have to do, or once you get on payroll, you have to do, right? And we've seen a lot of businesses get in trouble with payroll processing, to where the owner's like, oh, I'll do payroll processing. It can't be that hard. I'll just use the payroll system in QuickBooks, push a few buttons. And then they're like, I don't know why they didn't pay the taxes, or they didn't file this. Or so there's a lot of misunderstanding around whose job is what when it comes to payroll processing. And the best advice I could tell you is, unless you hire a bookkeeper, accountant, or payroll company that says, hey, we do everything, you just give us the hours, right? Assume every job is yours, right? From collecting the hours, putting those into the payroll system, making sure your tax percentages are set up properly. That's going to be federal, state, local taxes, district taxes, depending on where you live. Some of those areas love to tax all of their people in their community, down to, I know, like in San Francisco, for instance, there is certain areas of the city, and you have to put in the exact location. They have a district or area tax where they will tax contractors one rate. And I'm not kidding you, on the next block, it's a completely different rate, right? So you have to know all this stuff and make sure your payroll is set up properly. Then once you have all of that set up, right, you've got to be like, well, how many hours did people put in? What's our payroll schedule? How often are we paying them? Is it weekly? Is it every other week? What is this? So you have to make sure that's set up. You enter the people's hours, you process the payroll, and then there's all these wonderful things that come into play where they say, oh, but there's a holiday. Now your payroll is going to be one day late. And they're like, what do you mean it's going to be one day late? We didn't know this. So there's all kinds of challenges around payroll. So definitely, take the time and make sure you understand, or you're working with somebody that can give you that clarity and help you understand, what are these challenges? What's the timelines? What's the deadlines? Things like that. We support our clients around this all the time. They realize it's a headache they don't want. And then you've got to make sure you file the taxes, right? You've got reports to file to federal, state, local tax, district tax, county tax. All these different districts, you have to file those, and you have to then pay them. So it's not just filing, it's paying them. And typically what we find is when it comes to payroll, the cash flow to fund payroll is the biggest challenge. Core Growth Strategies provides business growth management solutions through cloud accounting, bookkeeping, and strategic business consulting programs. Our team works with small businesses in lawn care and landscape and trade industries throughout the U.S. We increase our clients' business acumen by creating business performance transparency through financials and strategic advisement based on industry best practices and benchmarks. Our experienced team provides support, guidance, and coaching, thereby allowing our clients to connect with viable data and discover their own solutions. Core Growth Strategies programs and services are designed to get your business from where it is now to where you have always dreamed it to be. Visit us today at coregrowthstrategies.com and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Don't miss our exclusive limited time podcast special. Just mention promo code GPA Pro to any member of our team during your complimentary consultation, or enter the promo code on our site when you sign up for one of our online programs. That's promo code GPA Pro.
So I'm a huge fan of payroll services, really am, whether it's a large national firm or a local firm. It just takes a lot of issues and challenges and liability out of your pocket and puts it, onto people who do it every day, who follow the law, the local laws. So they're going to keep up with all the state taxes, federal tax requirements, and also tracking. Like ours has an app, and as our people move from production to sales, they can plug into that. So that gives us really good reports. If they're working at the shop doing like capital improvement projects, they can go into shop work and track their time in there. So those reports are automatically generated. It definitely created a lot of clarity for us. And also everything gets done on time. They do our quarterlies, they do W-2s. And unless you have like an internal bookkeeper full time that also is keeping up with all of the Social Security, IRS requirements, I would recommend the payroll service. I've had one since the 90s, and we've always done it that way. And before that, I was doing it, and I have to run to the bank and make the deposits. And but now it's really nice, and some of them have different ways for your team to log in. They can geo-fence them, so they log in when they get in a geo-fence, so they're not just logging in randomly wherever. But the reports that we get are, accurate. And if they make a mistake, they pay for it. So big fans of payroll services.
Yeah. And I believe you use paychecks. Is that
we
correct?
use paychecks, and the paychecks, you have to watch them. They're trying to upsell you $25,000 employee handbooks. The challenge is, as long as we're keeping up with what the federal laws are and the state laws are, I can't create my own laws for handbooks, right? So I have to always follow the federal precedes the state. So, we always have to follow the federal and then the state laws. And then we can have our own policies in the company, but I can't make my own up. My rules doesn't, go over anybody else's laws. So making sure that, you do definitely have a company policy book. Our sheet is 2 pages long. It's very general and somewhat vague just because we can't cover every single situation. We also have our immutable laws, which helps to protect some of our policies and procedures don't need to be implemented, because if they're breaking an immutable law, they're definitely breaking some other policy and procedure. But paychecks is good. They'll creep up on your account sometimes as far as like the fees. So you have to watch them, call them up, ask them to have let's review what we're being charged, and they'll dial back some of the fees. But they're good. I have used a local one. We used them for about 8 or 9 years. But they didn't have all the, apps where my team could log in. We were still like faxing and calling things in 8 years ago, which seems like archaic at the time. And they're all computerized, and they have a good platform. So we might, if we don't want to move because it's a big deal to move, but if we have to, we have another avenue. So, what are you using for your clients, Christine?
Yeah. So paychecks is I would say a good one for a larger company, something like yours or bigger even. We use Gusto. We have worked in several different payroll platforms. I would never recommend using a small payroll platform or one that isn't very known. We have migrated several clients from different platforms that were unknown, and it was really just a mess, and the lack of clarity and reporting. But I love Gusto. It's very affordable for businesses at almost any size. They have great add-on HR services that are extremely affordable, where they give you, a basic, here's a handbook, right, for your location in your state. That's very easy to implement. You can get it updated every year at an affordable price. And it's very easy to use, not only for the employees, but for the employer or your accountant or bookkeeper. And the other thing is they have lots of different apps that integrate to it. So if they don't have that as an option, guess what? They have an app that can integrate into the software and import the information directly. So I really like that platform. It's one of the best that I've worked in for small businesses.
Gusto.
Yep.
Yes.
It's a great
one. So Gusto, and then there's ADP.
No ADP. Do not
okay.
Don't
go
touch ADP
right.
with a 10-foot pole. Like,
right.
Yeah, they're not. I would not suggest to go that direction.
Right.
Unfortunately.
Paychecks. All right. Gusto Paychecks. This seems to be the ones that are safe. And I had used Paychecks for years, and then we switched to this other local company, and then now we're back with Paychecks. So those are the companies you want to look at that. But it is a big task to do it. And I know people say, well, we do it in-house for a number of reasons. So if that works for you, but just make sure that everything is good, because people, you read all the time, people being sued for, they didn't make the workers' comp, or they didn't make the unemployment payments correctly. And they go back like 7 years. I mean, once they find one thing, it's game on, and they start digging. So just make sure you have yourself covered there. All right. Next is inventory management for businesses. And part of the inventory can be, so we use a lot of fertilizers, herbicides, insecticides. Part of the inventory can be for that. It can also be for plants, but it can also be for like rolls of weed barrier, or if you're doing a lot of pavers, maybe you put fabric underneath. And it can also be for your shop, like tires. It's $1,200 for 4 tires now. So how many tires do we have? So inventory your parts, your materials, and the goods that you're going to use.
Yeah, and you could simply use, like, if you're using QuickBooks. QuickBooks has a very legitimate, easy to use inventory system. You might want to have somebody set it up for you professionally if you feel like it's a little bit out of, your expertise, which is fine. But yeah, we've set up inventory systems for clients in QuickBooks that has supported exactly what they need, has saved them money, and it helps them also monitor their costs and expenses when it comes to their inventory. So, and you're right, internal inventory, what supports the operations internally and externally, like what are you going to be delivering to the customer, with any materials that you need, whether they're in bulk or just, kind of like, we install these paver stones. So inventory really helps save money in the business. You're not spending things that you don't need. You're saving on costs. And, and we even talked about in one of our episodes that, the just-in-time inventory, right? Because you're not wasting money on buying all this inventory. You're only getting it when you need it.
And, using the same type of pavers, if you're doing pavers, we use Techoblock. I was at a company, they're doing $2.5 million in pavers annually, but they only use Belgard. And I was super impressed with how small we call it boneyard in the industry, extra pavers that are left over. And the majority of the pavers that were actually there were from jobs where they had taken those pavers out of the job, and they were storing it. They give it away. They recycle it to their employees and stuff. But they weren't, so it wasn't even part of the extra pavers, because they are so diligent about using that Belgard, or they stay in that product line. So it helps them to manage their inventory really well. So just streamlining your inventory can be a big help with production and also management. But keeping a track on like too many tires or $1,200 worth of nuts and bolts, and many of us have these nut and bin nut and bolt bins, right? You can put a lot of money into nut and bolt bins. So you need to also keep track of the inventory in there.
Yeah.
But I would recommend starting with what you're buying the most of, the top 20%, do that first. And then you can start moving down to nuts and bolts.
Yeah. And it helps you monitor your stock, right? How much do you have? How much do you need? How much do you don't need? And then it also helps you calculate your costs, right? Your cost of goods sold or your operational costs. And, this really ties into our next topic, which is that expense review and analysis, which is extremely important in every business. It's one of those things that are typically neglected. Like, oh, let's just keep doing business and working away. And nobody stops to look at, well, what are we spending? What are we spending money on? And I am all over what we spend in our company. Like, I look at things all the time. I'm like, when does our software renew? How much is it? Did it go up? Are we really using this anymore? What are we spending on office supplies or shipping? Is there a better option? Should we move from, postal service to UPS, right? So there's all these options. So looking at what you're spending, and this is a huge part of Profit First. When we implement Profit First, one of the things that we highly suggest is an expense review analysis. And we say, hey, okay, we're going to go item by item, expense category by expense category, and we are going to dig in deep. Like, what are you spending money on? We have found companies that have 3 paid subscriptions to a music service because they couldn't decide which one they wanted. And they're only using one in the office, right? Like, well, our customers come in on the showroom floor. Great, pick one, cancel the other 2. That's how much savings a month, or they went digital and they're not printing anything anymore, but they're still leasing that ginormous industrial copier that's setting in, the office manager space because she loves it. But they're not really using it anymore. So they're spending $1,200 or $1,500 a month. So really looking at, like, what are we spending? Do we need that spend? Is it the right percentage of spend? And looking at it category by category in your business.
Yeah, we've been guilty of that. I think we had, I had cars that had Sirius radio, and then like it takes me a year to cancel the subscription. We have to look at a lot of things that we have. We do that twice a year. We've gotten much better at that, right? Because it's $1,100 here, $800 there. Next thing you know, and we put it in context. Well, we could have bought a slice seater with that. $1,100, $800. That's $1,900, and all these little things start adding up. And one of the things that exercise I did at Mike McCallowitz's suggestion was I called up my vendors and I said to them, "Hey, what are we not buying from you that we should? What are we not getting from you that we should?" So blades, let's say for our slice seaters for our Billy Goat, if we buy them in 10 at a time, it was only $300 and not $560. So $360. So we're saving $200 a set. So sure, it was $3,600, but it was way cheaper. We're basically getting 3 sets for free by buying 10 sets at a time instead of buying 2 or 3 sets at a time. And,
Right.
One of our truck, he said, well, you could buy all of your oil changes. You could buy a bulk set of them and then use them down. So you could buy, so I think it saved about $30 an oil change. So again, $30 times 10, it's $300.
Yeah.
And we're getting the oil changes anyways. So just buying in those things. So that simple question of what are we buying? What are we not buying from you that we should? What are we not getting done that we should? It was a really powerful question. And we found also some things that the vendors were not doing that we should have. They're like, well, you really should be doing this. I'm like, well, you're not even offering. I didn't even know you did that. They're like, yeah, right. So
Right.
it was a really helpful exercise.
Yeah. Some low hanging fruit that I always look at is insurance costs, right? Somebody staying with the same insurance company because they always have. So it's like shop around, shop your rates. Like we do it all the time. The other thing, and this includes workers' comp, like all the, business insurance. Another one is merchant fees. So I have found if you push them, and especially if you're getting your merchant provider through your bank and you have all your other bank accounts there and you push them, they will lower those fees. They'll say, well, we'll adjust it for you, right? So that's another thing. Credit card fees is another one where you can kind of be like, I've had this card with you for 20 years. I have a $50,000 limit on this card. Like, come on, like lower my interest rate, right? So talking to your credit card company, and then subscriptions. So those are the main common areas that I always say, let's look at these first. We have a tool, an outline of how to do an expense review analysis in our toolbox. So if you have not subscribed to the toolbox, do so. If you have, go in there and take a peek and find that and give it a look over and see how it might help you save some money.
Yeah, take the time to look at that. It's free and it will definitely help you. There's also the paid version of our toolbox, which has lots more tools.
A lot more, yeah.
And doing that expense analysis is always helpful. So I kind of will like share like, okay, for every $1,000 that we save, I'm going to put $20 toward the pizza party for the company, this month's pizza party. So that gets people to find it, because then next thing you know, you have $200 towards the pizza party. It's instead of just save me money, incentivize it for the whole company. It doesn't just go to the management team.
Nice. So the next area that I want to cover, and we can cover this kind of quickly, is the crafting and analyzing financial statements, right? What does that mean? What does it mean when it's like, oh, I'm going to create a financial statement and I'm going to analyze it? I know that doesn't sound very exciting. You might be excited at first, and then once you look at it, you're like, what the heck is this thing? So, it can become very overwhelming quickly and kill all that excitement, unfortunately. So some of the main financial statements you want to look at these monthly, you want to look at them quarterly, and you don't want to look at just right now. You want to compare it to the prior period. So if you're looking at it, let's say for the month of March, you want to look at it for the month of March in the prior year, or the month of February in this year, right? So you're looking at a prior period and comparing. And these are going to be your balance sheets, your income statement, right? Which is also people call profit and loss, right? So you want to look at that. And then also your cash flow statement. These three reports should be a standard report that is created, and you can click a button and it will create it for you in your software, your accounting software system. You just have to pick your dates. You could also ask your accountant to create a special report for you that you want to look at. Our clients do that all the time. They're like, I want, this month prior period with the percentage comparison. They get all technical on us. So we can do that, and then we unpack it for them. What you're looking for is change, right? What change? Is it good or bad change? And then you want to ask yourself, what's causing that? So that's the simplicity of it, right? I would start there. If you're starting to run your own financial reports, run them, do a prior period comparison, pick that, look at what's changed, good or bad, and then ask yourself what's contributing to this or why. That is the easiest way to get started. But I would say start now, because the best thing you can do is look at your financial reports. Because if you're measuring it, you're going to be able to manage it.
Right. And the whole thing with the financial reports is we need something to look at, compare it to, right? And which direction are we going in, right? So I love comparisons of percentages. I love charts to see where is the trend going. And the trend is our friend, and it's also can be something we can manage. And the other thing, some people say, I don't want to look at the numbers because they're bad. Well, numbers aren't bad, right? Numbers, when we're lost, the GPS being lost isn't bad. But what's bad is not fixing it and not making improvements to go where you want to go, right? So if we don't like our numbers and that's the trend, now we can decide how to get out of it and where we want to go. So I love like having charts of years and the percentages, because it really tells us. So if we're just looking at it and we're not comparing it to anything, it's not helpful. And the other thing is like when we have budget spends of like percent of equipment versus total revenue, and then all of the profit first accounts and profit, percentages and all that, we're comparing that. We want to trend in the direction that we're goaling towards. So we want to have financial goals that we can manage towards. And sometimes it shows us, it might take us longer or we can do it much quicker. But looking at that balance sheet, the income statement, and those cash flow statements are crucial. And my business really didn't start growing until I learned how to read a balance sheet and how to manage my business from it, because I was so focused on the P&L or the income statement and not realizing that all the heavy lifting for the foundation of the business is over on the balance sheet.
Yeah. And if you're working with an accountant, we do this with our clients. And I suggest ask your accountant, right? If you have an accountant you love and you're working with and they're not doing this with you, ask them to set up a review call or even do a quick video for you to review these financial reports for you. And I guarantee you are going to learn from them. You're going to start picking up what they're talking about. You're going to start seeing these insights, and it's going to become easier and easier. So if you're not having it done now and you're working with a professional, just ask them, say, hey, is this something you can do for me? And most likely they will do it. If they're the right accountant that you should be working with, they will do it because it's important to them that you grow and understand your financials. And this, also is another reason why the role of the accountant in your business is so important. They can help you review those financial records. They can review them in a quick video or even a call. And also, if you're working with somebody who makes adjustments to your books, let's say you have some complicated things happening in your business, and it might give you some insight to have them make those adjustments more often instead of annually for strategic planning reasons. Ask them to make those adjustments. Say, hey, instead of making these adjustments to our books annually, could you do them quarterly so we can have a better understanding and insight and strategically plan, with maybe it's a CFO that you're going to hire, or you have an internal person, or when your accountant does unpack your financials, they're going to be able to talk about those percentage adjustments and those financial adjustments that they would typically make annually, more on a monthly or quarterly basis. So that's another tip that I would throw in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk with a professional. Get somebody else on your team for this, because if you're just sitting there with your numbers and you're looking, there's no dialogue or discussion. It's not as helpful. Having at least one or two other people involved, definitely. And also you have to report to them and you have to meet with them. So it's kind of like your exercise buddy, right? You're going to exercise way more if you have someone that you have to show up for and you're going to meet with and go over stuff.
Yeah.
So review that, go over all that. So compliance, reporting, planning for the future, tax obligations and compliance, analyzing and planning. We're going to cover that real quick.
Yeah. So, I know it's such a fun topic. There's so much fun, right, in this financial, workflow. So you want to make sure that your business is staying compliant with tax obligations and, properly preparing for that, right? So I would say make sure you talk to a professional. Say, this is my business. This is my business model. These are all the areas of tax. Like we file sales tax, we file local tax. These are our tax obligations. And just make sure that they might be able to easily provide you like a tax schedule for your area. Or they might be able to just do a review to make sure that you're in compliance, because the worst thing to do, and we've had clients that did this, they didn't know they were supposed to be filing sales tax and collecting it. Then they were obligated to pay all that sales tax 3 years back that they never collected. There is fines and penalties associated with that. That's a simple one. We've had other clients to where they were paying one district tax. They realized that they had two district taxes that they were obligated to pay. And fortunately, we found that they were paying, the two district tax to this one district. So we were able to do a review and then just move that money to the other district. But how common is that, right? So make sure what are your obligations as a business owner? Are there property taxes that you need to pay? Things like that. The other thing around analysis and planning is, do you have a budget? right? You want to look at like, what is your budget? A great way to look at it to start out is to do a profit first assessment. And then you can use that to forecast, what are we spending and what should we be spending? And then you kind of reverse engineer it and go, okay, in our operations, we're spending this much. We're about 10% over. What can we fix? Where can we make adjustments? It will also, that tool will help you with forecasting for future financial planning. Like if you're saying our revenue for the next quarter is X amount, it will tell you when you put it into your profit first calculator. Okay, well, now we're gonna be short $10,000 in our OpEx. So what's causing that? What can we change or what do we need to do about it? So it gives you some insights. I would say the profit first tools are the easiest to use when it comes to forecasting and budgeting. And then you can work your way into getting an official, line by line budget if your heart desires on what you're spending in your business, and then being able to forecast and plan with benchmarks and KPIs, key performance indicators in your business.
Yes. Make sure you're paying your taxes in all property tax, Social Security, even insurances. Make sure you pay it all, right? Sales tax is another thing. And if you're going to get audited, they're going to find something, that's their job, but you want them to find the least as amount as possible.
Yeah. To show you're doing your best, right? You have best intentions and, you've done your due diligence. And even if they do find something and they see that, they're usually pretty understanding and they'll try to find the best way forward.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Topics that we're going to leveraging technology.
Yeah. This is one of my favorites. I love technology. I love automations. So just make sure that you're using the right accounting software. And also that it's getting, updated regularly if it's a software that needs to be updated. And if you're using, let's say, an industry specific software, make sure it integrates with your accounting software, because as amazing as so many of these softwares are that are industry specific, they're not accounting softwares. They're there to help you run your business, really tighten up those, profit margins on your services, communicate with your customers, communicate with your team, and integrate into that software. So make sure you're using, a software company that's known, that's continuously updating and making changes to better support you as a business. And then the other thing I would say is, when in doubt, seek professional help. Right? Do you need to get more advisement on your tax strategies? Do you need more support on your payroll? Do you want somebody just to look at some things for you? And also, are you ready to maybe hire an internal bookkeeper versus having an external one? Or do you gain, more value and insight from keeping an external person and just having an office manager, kind of do some of the maintenance and data entry and work with a professional bookkeeper. But I always advise seek professional help, because on the other end, it's a minimum of 8 to 10 times the cost when you realize we have to now fix something because we didn't work with a professional.
There's all kinds of different professionals, and not all accountants are business advisors. Some of them are purely tax accountants, and they really don't ever want to be advising businesses other than on taxes. So, even like how to look at reports, telling you what reports you should look at to make decisions in your business. There's accountants that don't do that. They just do taxes and they stay in their lane. And then there's different accountants that will do taxes and they can help you with some business decisions and which, reports to look over. So be careful who you're listening to on that. Make sure that you're getting the right professional that can help you. And don't choose a professional based on who's the cheapest, lowest cost professional. You want to choose a professional that's going to give you the most impact for the dollar. So just be aware of that. And make sure that the professional knows more than you. So if you're asking basic questions and they don't know, that means that it's not the right person, because they're just usually staying in their lane and they're just trying to stay compliant to the federal tax regulations. They're not looking at what business ratios you should have, what your profit first percentages should be, what your income should be. They'll be like, well, keep it between 8 and 12% because you won't get you're least likely to get audited if it's between that percentage, as opposed to, well, how do we get to 15 and 20%? What should your gross profit margin? That's not in their realm. So be careful for that. So key takeaways for today.
Yeah. So we went over organizational, like document management, right? So making sure you have invoices and receipts and bank statements. So all the basic stuff that, typically you don't want to manage, right? You need those receipts, you need those documents, you need your liability documents, things like that. It will really help out your accountant or your bookkeeper, whether it's internally or externally, right? They need that stuff. Let them handle that stuff, but just at least facilitate getting it to them. We talked about the technical foundation, making sure that you have your chart of accounts set up properly and you're putting all those things in the right buckets so your business can tell you the story that it's trying to tell you. Right. So you're not, kind of putting that mute button on your business. You're saying, hey, how are we doing? Tell me where we can improve. It will tell you if the structure is set up properly. We talked about some techniques for effective management to receive your cash in your business, accounts receivable, and also to pay your vendors properly, right? And more effectively. So accounts payable. We also talked about some payroll processing, tips, inventory management, why it's good for your business, as well as jumping into those financial statements preparation, right? Don't be afraid of them. They're going to give you that clear picture. And then just coordinating with your tax advisor or a professional. That's going to make sure that you're in compliance. So you don't, make sure you know that you're not breaking the rules. Right? They're not very understanding when you say, well, I didn't know. They look at it like, well, if you open a business, it's your job to know. So, and then leverage your technology and work with a professional. So making sure that you're using software that will help you run your business effectively and efficiently and help you manage those profit margins. So you're not doing it all manually, and reaching out for professional help when you need it.
So the overall aim of doing all this is to make sure that your business has really healthy financial records so you can stay well organized and you can have accurate information, be compliant, but also the real reason is so you can have a better business, so you can have a better life, so you can keep the promises that you made to yourself when you started the business. You can keep the promises that you made to your spouse, your significant other, your kids, your family, your community, that you were like, when I start this business, I'm going to do all these great things. And then the real world shows up. It's, time to get back on track and to meet all of those promises and stop waking up at 2:00 in the morning, trying to figure out how we're going to pay payroll. And now you're going to know how to pay payroll and know how to live the life that you dreamed about. So That's why we do it. Whether it's boring or not, we do it.
We do it. Yeah, it's a necessary evil. And if you're not the champion, find somebody on your team that is, right? Get there. Make that an accountability point. Like, you are hired to do this because you need it done in the business.
Yes. So, identify someone and get them on board.
Yeah. So in the show notes, we are going to provide a link to where you can get a free monthly financial workflow checklist. So please look there. And if you want to get a free consultation, I welcome you to reach out to Core Growth Strategies, which is my accounting firm, where you can get this free consultation and you can just talk to them about what you have going on, what help you might need or concerns that you might have. The consultations are always extremely valuable and you gain a wealth of information.
Absolutely. And thank you for joining us on this podcast. And we look forward to you joining us on the next one. Thanks. Thanks for listening to the Green Profit Academy Pros Podcast,
the show that digs into the challenges of growing a lawn care and landscape business while maximizing your profit.